Good afternoon. Welcome to Project Review Committee for July 19th, 2023. We're going to go ahead and start today's meeting at 1:36 p.m. We'll go ahead and start with roll call here from city staff. Myself, Oscar Cepeda, the associate planner. We're also joined by Rocio Mejia, the assistant planner. We're also joined by Jason Reidenauer, the assistant city manager. We're also joined by Jeff O'Neill, the city planner. We're also joined by Javier Sanchez, the Engineering and Project Management Director. Michael Knight also joins us with the as a Public Works Director. We're also joined by Clayton Dignam, our Fire Marshal with the Fire Department. We're also joined by James Wickersham, our Chief Building Official within the Building Division. We're also joined by Robert Alvarez, our Field Services Manager. And we're also joined by Sarah Torres with the Engineering Division. Looks like that's all from city staff. With that, I'm going to go ahead and open oral communications. This is the opportunity for members of the public to address the committee on any matter pertaining to project review. Seeing no members of the public here in person or joining us online, we're going to go ahead and close oral communications. With that, I'm going to go ahead and start with today's agenda. We have one item, which is PRC number 2023-022 for Mariscos El Malecón, located at 58 East Mill Avenue. From planning, let me go ahead and share my screen here, showing the site plan. So what we have here as an application is for a proposed tenant improvement of the existing restaurant, consisting of an expansion of the restaurant floor area from 1,891 square feet to 2,161 square feet, adding about 270 square feet of extra dining area. As far as the property, it is located within the downtown retail north of Olive. It does have a general plan land use of downtown retail. The existing business is a permitted use. It does have a active conditional use permit in regards to alcohol sales for a type 21 alcohol license under Resolution 9/2018. So as far as comments from the Planning Division, in order to approve an expansion of the use, we would have to modify the existing conditional use permit to include the new floor area. With that, we do have a process that goes through City Council. It will be a public hearing. There are fees associated with that process. For example, a modification of a conditional use permit is $150. It will require an environmental assessment in which we could make the determination as a notice of exemption for a $79 fee. There is a noticing and map for labels that will be processed if it does go to council, in which we'll mail a public hearing within the 500 feet radius of this property. A notice will be given to those property owners, advising them of this project. Let me see here. As far as any other comments from planning, it's going to be complying with the existing conditional use permit. No changes to the conditional use permit is what I'm understanding. No changes as far as hours of operation, correct? As far as any public improvements, it's going to be dependent on the building permit evaluation, which our engineering division could outline, but there could be some improvements triggered based off the project. And again, it's dependent on the building permit evaluation. It's about, at this time, what is it, about 25, Javier, or 26,000? Okay.
Yeah, I think we're close to like 27,000 now.
Okay, and we'll provide that figure in the letter. But as far as what could be triggered, improvements could include sidewalk, street furniture. Let me pull up the Google Maps here. An example, again, not saying that this project would trigger that, but just be aware. As far as the parking, the property is within a parking district in our downtown area, which adjacent to or across the street here, there is a city parking that the establishment does utilize and can utilize for their business. As far as any other standard comments on our end from planning, complying with our development ordinance, any other signage, making sure that complies with chapter or section 305 of our development code. Any trash enclosures, if triggered by this project, complying with our development ordinance as far as the screening and landscaping of that enclosure.
It's gonna require trash enclosure, but they're gonna run into a challenge of space, so we'll have to look at that.
Okay, with that, should we jump into Public Works?
We can.
Okay. But yeah, that was all comments from planning. With that, we'll hand it off with Public Works with that question about or the topic in regards to the trash enclosure.
So from Public Works, Bree is out on vacation today, so I'll just provide some brief comments. It will require a 3-bin trash enclosure. Currently, you only have a single bin. Because it's a food establishment, you'll be required to have a organics recovery bin as well. And then should have a recycling bin on site. So
What about that green?
I was gonna, yeah, so that's the other thing. So we need to figure out a way to accommodate your enclosure. What other businesses have done, and I don't know what you have inside the fenced in area there, but they've created a recessed location to be able to place those bins in there so they can be housed and out of sight. So essentially the enclosure is to keep the bins out of sight.
The fire code requires 5 foot.
So the other individuals that have done that have also included sprinklers in the area of their bins when they're within that encroachment.
I'll touch on that when we get there.
So if they're within the encroachment of that spacing, then they've provided sprinklers to cover the bins should something be combustible and catch on fire or somebody intentionally light it on fire. So we'll run into some challenges there, but there is some adjacent property and we can look at those. We just need to discuss and find out how do we serve you according to the regulation. And so we're held to the regulation. And if we can accommodate a enclosure, my recommendation is that the grease trap is not housed in the alley either. So those conversations can move forward. It will be a requirement to possess that service as a result of your existing business. Even if you weren't going through this process, you would be receiving a letter from us here in the upcoming months to identify your property as being non-compliant, and we would be asking you to make those changes to make it compliant. So regardless of this process, you would be doing that. Yep. So, and then the other thing that we would need to look at, and I don't believe it exists there, is a backflow device for your water service because it is a commercial business. And a food establishment, that it should have a backflow preventer for your water service. And we can help with the location of that. Water staff could come out and meet with you and look to see where best to accommodate that placement. Okay. That's all the comments I have.
Thank you, Michael. Next with our building division with James.
It's a small addition to an existing space. Fire department's gonna touch on fire sprinklers. The only other thing I could think of would be occupancy load going up if 2 or more exits are already there or might need to be added.
Quick question.
Yes.
So behind the new addition, all the way to your left by where the 18 is at,
Looking better.
the other one. Yes. Where in the new addition, but more to the right.
Straight across.
Yes, straight across. There's a door right there that leads to the hallway that leads to the back exit of the building. Would that work, or should we need one straight to the?
Yeah, because the exit that you show on that other map,
Yeah, that's the hallway. That's the hallway for the
so
whole.
the exit that you show there in the kitchen, that is actually not a legal exit. You can't exit through a kitchen.
Oh, okay.
So right now you only have the front door.
Front door is your technical entrance,
And
so
would that one work, or we would have to like open up a
it would
whole?
be the path of egress. You have to put a door.
Could it be in the alley? Open to the alley?
Well, the exit there, so what he's talking about is in this building, there's a hallway that goes
Oh,
To
yeah,
the exit,
correct.
yeah.
to the exit, and there's a rear exit to the hallway.
right?
Yeah, that's the exit.
Can you see it on the back of the building? In the picture?
It would have to be dedicated and rated, you
Yeah.
know, just for that.
Oh, okay, so we would have to open up a new
Yeah,
one
yeah.
in that area, right? In that area right there.
Yeah, so to discharge, so, but how would you discharge? Because see, it
Right,
goes
right.
into that gated area,
Yes.
that doesn't
Yeah,
count as an
no.
exit. You'd have to install panic hardware and everything on that to get people.
It would
out.
have to be like a door, like a door with,
And is there any way we could do it in this part of the building? Because the other one, I think it leads to where the gate is at.
What's the, could there be minimum, maximum?
yeah, there's so there's a half the, you know, basically, so half the diagonal distance, say if you got 100 feet and half of it's 50, your two exits have to be at least 50 feet apart.
Okay.
So you don't want two of them right next to
Yes,
each other.
yes. But it can definitely be in that area, the existing area, right? It doesn't have to be in the new area.
Like
Correct.
here?
Okay,
Correct,
perfect.
correct, correct. As
Yeah,
long
because
as it
then-
work, as long as it meets the
distance
code, the
requirement.
distance. yeah.
Okay, and as long as there's two. They're
Yeah,
not
let me ask
50
you
feet.
something, that hallway that you exit out of there to the north, does that also go to the front entrance to the building?
Yes, it goes to the front and to the
Okay,
back.
So what are, we need to know what those distances
And
are.
and that new addition has a door also, so.
The front of the building,
So you can't, you won't be able to take the second exit and go all the way across,
Yeah,
you know
to
what I
that.
mean?
Yes,
we
That's
just-
just too far.
Is it that, I think it's that
The
center
one,
door.
the one to the right.
It's actually the other one.
Oh, it is the-
It is that one, yes, it is.
And then is there a corridor
Yeah,
that
it's a
just
hallway.
leads to that?
Yeah.
It's a hallway with like business and
yeah.
offices on each side.
like tenants, like offices or, yeah.
Yeah, we're not the designers, you know, your draftsman, your architect would design that, and then we would just do a plan review on
And
it.
what he would do is he would show that and he would show distances, or he would provide us with a scalable set of plans that we could measure to make sure that it meets the minimum. Or actually, in this case, it would meet the maximum allowable distance.
And as of right now, it's 50 feet, right? From one door to the other.
Well, that's the distance.
That was
between
just an
doors.
easy
Oh, the
example.
example,
That was an
okay.
easy example.
That makes sense, yes. Measuring from point A to point B, the middle, that's the
And
distance.
then, yeah, and so it needs to be at least that, they need to be at least that distance of separation, but then there's also the travel distance from the furthest point to an exit. Right? So what you would do is you would place an imaginary person somewhere in there, and then they would have to be within a certain distance to at least one of the exits.
Oh,
But the person would do that, so I'll let James finish.
And then any fire rating walls possibly between, cause you would be considered, I'm guessing, a A2, anytime you get over 50 people, it's considered A2. So A2 versus, like a retail M, we would just get in the code book and see if there's any fire rating between two businesses. But that would be during plan review. But that's something do you have an architect,
not yet.
draftsman?
We're in the process.
You wanna see what we tell you first?
Yes, yes, because it's high and pricey. It can be really high.
But that's all I would have, mainly just plan review, comments.
Pretty much heads up on that we can
Right.
think of things that might come up, will come up.
Thank you, James. With that, we'll hand it off with fire department.
So because you are creating a condition, what you have is what we refer to as an existing non-conforming use. use, right? You've heard the term grandfathered in. Basically, your business is an existing non-conforming use because back then the code allowed something, but today's code doesn't allow that. And so the way the code reads is that if a restaurant like yours is in a fire area that's more than 5,000 square feet, it has to be sprinkled.
So
Okay,
the fire
so as
area,
long as you were staying the same, we would not have any mechanism to make you upgrade. But because now you're coming in with a desire to expand, now we require, because that's the case, you have to come into compliance with the most recently adopted code, which is the 2022 code. And it requires the 5,000 square foot maximum, so you would have to have the building sprinkled. And it wouldn't just be the restaurant, it's the building, right? And then that touches on what Mr. Knight brought up about the bins. You can put the bins closer to the building than the 5 feet rule if you have sprinklers, and then what they would do is they would just project sprinkler heads out over the trash enclosure, and then that would protect that area as well. And so there's great benefit to sprinklering, but it is very expensive.
Yes.
And so with that, it would have to be a monitored system. You would submit underground and monitoring system plans with the fire sprinkler plans and calculations. The fire department connection is required to be placed within 50 feet of a fire hydrant in an approved location where the conditions permit. It's to be located no closer than 40 feet from the building. Your property doesn't allow for that to be at least 40 feet away. So you would see something like, for example, on the back of the Palace restaurant that's upstairs. If you walk in the alley, you'll see the fire department connection just coming out of the wall.
Oh, yes,
And then
yes,
2 bollards. You would do something similar close to the nearest fire hydrant, which there's one on the corner there. So if we could get that within 50 feet, you would meet the requirement. If you cannot design it to get to within 50 feet of that, it may require an additional fire hydrant to be placed within 50 feet of your fire department connection. So for example, let's say you couldn't get within 50 feet of this one on the corner, but they wanted to put the FDC on the back of the building, maybe on the alley side. It might require an additional fire hydrant down here to meet that spacing requirement. And then in addition to that, we would require Knox access, which is basically a lockbox that goes on the building that gives us access to the property. In the event of a midnight fire or emergency, we can get in there. We don't have to basically cut through your doors or break out your windows. Okay?
Yes.
And if you've got any questions at all throughout the process, feel free to give me a call and I can discuss it further.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Clayton. Next, with Javier Sanchez, in the engineering division.
So for engineering, our requirements will depend on the valuation of your remodel or the addition. If the valuation is over 28,292, then that's when we start evaluating the need for public improvements. As Oscar stated, it'd be, you don't have any corner ramps since the alley is the city's property. But looking at like street lights, street trees. But again, that's if your valuation's over that 28,292. I don't know if at this point you have a cost or not. So our conditions will just be if the valuation is at or over that, then we'd evaluate the requirements at the time of the permit.
Thank you, Javier.
you understand?
So the evaluation is only like what we would spend or what we would cost for the permit, all right?
What you would spend on the
On the
project.
project. Oh, yeah. Okay.
And my understanding, a percentage of that goes to, public improvements, what is that, 20%? Okay,
Yeah, so say, you see, even you exceed the 20,000, say it's a $30,000 permit, we'd be looking at improvements capped at like 20% of that. So we limit improvements to, what's that, $6,000. So if it really doesn't afford anything, then there wouldn't be a requirement for this permit. Yeah, I don't know if James, did you talk about the entrance there? Having a step?
No,
So, that'd be one thing as you look at. We look at during the permit that in order to meet accessibility requirements, you'd want to turn that into a ramp. Just so you don't bring on accessibility issues.
Could I pull up an example? Like the one here. What's that? This one on Summit?
Right.
oh, okay. Makes sense.
Yeah, so those doors were elevated, kind of like yours. There was a step into them, and as part of the permit process, they had to create a level entrance into them, so they had a slight ramp up to them.
Makes sense.
Sounds good. Thank you, Javier.
Welcome.
With Robert, any comment?
No comments at this time.
Thank you, Robert. How about David?
Did you already cover the water service, Mike? I joined late.
Yes, it did.
Okay, no comments then.
Thank you. I believe that's all from staff here. As far as the comments from today's meeting based off your project, we'll compile it in a letter and which it will be mailed out to the applicant and agent. Again, compiling of what was proposed today. And then after that, it's just submitting the next step, which would be first going through the entitlement process, doing the modification, submitting an updated site plan based off of today's meeting. That way we could get it to council, get that modification, and then after that will be building permit process.
Perfect.
All right? Sounds good. With that, is there any questions for staff?
Not at all. You guys were helpful.
Thank you. With that, I'm gonna go ahead and end today's project review committee at 1:59 PM. I'd like to thank everybody. Thank you.